Family members of his victims speaking outside a London, Ontario courthouse today following the sentencing of Nathaniel Veltman. Back in 2021, he murdered 4 members of a Muslim family out for a walk with his truck. One little boy, 9 years old at the time, survived. He was convicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder in November. Today, he was handed down 5 concurrent life sentences for those crimes, which the judge said in a landmark ruling constituted an act of terrorism. Amira Elghawaby is Canada's special representative on combating Islamophobia. She's with us live now. Hi, Ms. Elghawaby. Good to have you here. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much, Vassy.
What does that classification of these murders as terrorism say to you?
Well, just as Justice Pomerantz said, this really is about a symbolic designation that what occurred on June 6, 2021, where this beautiful family, 5 members of the Afzaal family, were out for an evening walk, and this killer saw them, recognized that they were Muslim, had planned for a long time to attack Muslims in a bid to terrorize them, to make Muslims feel unsafe in their country, where he deliberately targeted this family. And she found today in her ruling that that was indeed a motivated act of political ideology, of white nationalism, that deserved to be designated as an act of terror.
What do you think the broader message to the public is on that designation?
I mean, I think all Canadians were just absolutely horrified by what happened that day. And we saw such an outpouring of love and solidarity and the reaffirmation that Canada is a place where people of all backgrounds and religions and faith and ethnicities could live in peace together. And so what all Canadians should take from this is that, just as the Justice said today, this type of ideology is a cancer within our societies. When we see hate proliferate, whether it's online or offline, that this is an undermining of our social values, our cohesion, and our democracy. And therefore, it's up to each and every one of us to take responsibility and combat it wherever we see it, we find it, in order to uphold what it means to be a Canadian.
We heard from some of the members, the family members of the victims just off the top of this segment. Many of them, including the little boy who survived this vicious attack, submitted victim statements to the court during the process of sentencing. If you're watching tonight and you have the opportunity, you should take it and read those statements because they are heart-wrenching, to say the least, particularly this young little boy. You have spent a lot of time since 2021 with the community in London and with the family members I'm referencing. How are they doing today?
I can tell you, Vassy, that, everyone in that courtroom who'd come to wait for that ruling was, sitting, at the edge of the benches in that courtroom. We were all just holding our breath. And Justice Pomerantz, her ruling was so compassionate in understanding that. And very quickly, she, made the decision public that this was indeed deemed an act of terror. You could see a collective gasp go out in the courtroom. You saw the family members look to each other. Many of us had tears in our eyes. The affirmation that this type of terror unleashed against our communities was one that is deemed terrorism meant so much for the families, meant so much for our communities, and again, for all Canadians. Sadly, the reality is that terrorism has often been associated only with Muslims. And oftentimes, even though our communities have faced massacres, not only in this instance, but even in Quebec City, we saw the massacre of 6 worshippers. And so this recognition and validation that Muslims are also and can be victims of such hateful ideology is very important. And what it means to all of us is to say that Islamophobia can have deadly consequences. And that's why all of us have to stand against any form of it in our day-to-day lives, whether it's discrimination, harassment, any form of hate against anyone has to be condemned because it can have very desperate and sad consequences in our society.
Was it emotional for you being in the courtroom when that ruling came down?
Vassy, having, as you know, I've worked on the issue of Islamophobia for many, many years. And for a long time, we had to really make it clear that this was a phenomenon that was very worrisome to many of us as Canadians. And a lot of times we had to make that case, and people didn't always believe that it was something to be worried about. And when Quebec City happened, people started to wake up to it. And then when the attack in London, Ontario, I think more and more Canadians really came to that realization. So it was very emotional to me. It shouldn't have taken all these lives lost for Canadians to join Muslims in understanding that this form of insidious hate, this form of narrative about Muslims as being dangerous, as being unable to integrate, deserving of hate, that this moment has come, and that all Canadians, I hope, understand that Islamophobia is real and it's a direct threat to our safety and well-being.
Ms. Elghawaby, I'll leave it there. I appreciate you making the time for the conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vassy.